Welcome to the Breakthrough Ordinary podcast. We are committed to empowering and bringing you effective tools and wisdom to live your extraordinary life here now through impactful conversations with thought leaders, trainers, coaches, and healers. By trusting yourself, we believe you can generate your goals and desires. Your hosts are sibling duo, Marc and Claudine Tremonte.
Marc here. Hi.
Claudine here. Today's episode is called the Unwelcome Guest, and it's come from both our shared experiences as citizens of the world, and particularly mine as a therapist on front lines. That's what I call this past year and a half of looking at what has occurred when COVID and a global pandemic has encountered all citizens. There was no one excluded from this past year, and we thought it was important to just do a dive on this. And we want to both start off by a moment of silence and honoring that there's been 5 million lives lost.
Absolutely.
And we say that because one of the things that we've all lived through that we don't always maybe talk about is we've lived a lot of anxiety and grief for this past year and a half. And I get that we're also through it, and whatever that means. We're in a new phase. So, right, we're in a vaccination phase. We're in a recovery phase economically. And we also have some unknowns, right? We have variants, and we don't know what the future, we don't know, right? We're in a human trial in a vaccination. But I wanted to step back for a moment and really just recognize the amount of shift that as a world we all lived through. And it had very different impacts, right? There's people who it's devastated their lives, shifted their lives, enriched their lives, and it's all about choice and perspective. But we still get to honor what impact it had so that they can move forward and claim what was next for them. So we joke about the long hair, right? There's some friends who still haven't had their first COVID haircut, and but there's also all the kids that are graduating this year. And I was just at a party recently, a picnic, and, one of the parents said, I really think there's going to be a delay in social emotional development for some of our children. And I have to say, yeah, maybe for a certain age. We've talked about differences in academic experience, but all of our kids worked from home. I mean, went to school at home. Our parents were asked to work from home, and this like flexible and adaptive. We did what we had to do, right? Remember when we got the quarantine? Who ever heard of that word? Like,
very different world.
Sure. And I can remember counseling people who were like, I don't know how to run this household. I have 2 kids. I don't have camp, and they have to be in a meeting, and yet they also have to be with their 5 or 6-year-old who's maybe in 1st or 2nd grade, and they're spinning in their chair, but they're like, I'm being paid my full salary. I can't, like, parents had to face choices. Single mothers and fathers had to face choices that they've never encountered before. There's no rule book on how to handle a pandemic. And I think there's an honoring and a wisdom and a resiliency. I think we get to recognize there's so many unsung heroes. I applaud our medical workers who stayed in the hospitals. We have family members who have been multiple tested, right? A lot of scares. And even seeing how that protocol's changed, right? When she first suspected that she had gotten COVID, she was home, paid. And then it became, you may get exposed, just get tested, come back tomorrow, right? Like, because no one knew. No one knew. And still, I don't know that we fully still know. We may have more information, but I don't think we fully understand that. And even like, what's the symbolism? We joke now, I think COVID will always be known for the shortage of toilet paper.
Yes, I definitely stored up on toilet paper. I still have a story of toilet and paper towels.
I will verify that. My brother's a bulk buyer. But, I can remember being in a workshop, being a coach. At the time, I was working for a coaching company, a coaching school. And we had a workshop on what's with the toilet paper. And it had me open up to the idea that in a time, we had no control and say. Right? We were told and we had to respond. And toilet paper became the focus of control for us. It was like, but I can control my toilet paper. I can control my food, because I can't. about school, about work, about my health, about the unknown, right? We don't tend to all step into the unknown. We like to stay in what we know. That other little section, which is really the biggest section of the pie, is I don't know what I don't know. We all lived in that, and that's not a tendency for most people. We go for our comforts. And we were asked and responded in this past year and a half to living in I don't know what I don't know.
And I think the dramatic that it was the whole world. It wasn't a section of people. It wasn't one country. It was the whole world living in uncertainty. I just want to share that we're going to have a guest on today on this podcast that's has a very diverse experience of COVID, from family to work and everything. So we're going to bring her on later. I want to second everything you said. And what it really speaks to in me, or for me, is Gary Zukav talks about in The Seat of the Soul, intention. Even Oprah has brought it up very strongly in her experience. But so we've had this experience, and we all have different, whether the vaccine is manipulated, whether Trump, we're all on every
mask,
side.
No mask.
Yeah, and this is not about you're wrong on any side. This is really great. We've had this whole experience. What's our intention moving forward? Are we going to go back to the same world? I'm not saying it automatically changes in certain ways, but that doesn't mean we change. You really have to have intention. You have to have a desire to look at, we're in this together. If there's anything, we're in this together. There is no, you got it, I don't got it, or mask, no. We're in this together. Everybody was affected. And so what's our intention moving forward? How are we going to love? How are we going to share? Are we going to change the way we do things? Are we going to look at our ways of living and how we live in the world? I mean, are we just going to go unexamined? Which brings me to the road less traveled, and unexamined life's not worth living. It's like, are we going to look at ourselves? Are we going to look inside? Are we going to get real? Are we going to see people differently? Are we going to love? Are we going to come together? Are we going to keep this division on ideas and beliefs, even though we're all human? We're all struggling here. We're all in it together. We could all die together. We could all live together. How are we going to do this now? Or are we just going to go back to the same old?
Yeah. You bring up the point that I think it was a heightened year and a half of us versus them. And I don't even know who us and them are, by the way. But we created divisionism. And the illness did too in us, right? Mask versus no mask. We can joke about it, but it was like more evidence of, I'm right, you're wrong. And I know that part of it comes from awareness. Right? When I think of, if anybody, COVID, relationship, divorce, you take any topic, is there awareness enough to do an audit of where we are so that we can advance ourselves? But there's got to be some stages that we're open to, right? So I get to audit and review, where am I, right? So that I can then set my intention of where do I want to go? Where do I want to advance my life to? We speak of many articles, particularly I work for an employee assistance program and as a coach, and one of the things we are getting a lot of articles is returning to the new normal. What's the normal, right? There's all these headlines right now, and I appreciate that people are writing these articles because they're really offering us a chance to say, what do we want to evaluate or reevaluate or redefine in our lives? There's one of the things we could say is we've seen a lot of shifts. I could speak for our area, but we know this statistically, is we saw more families walking together, biking together. It's much more family time. I'm not going to dismiss that there was not domestic violence, alcohol use, but I want to just say it redefined values. And I think that's the important part. Do you want to live into the values that you accessed? Maybe not by your control, not by your say, but this became a reflective time of saying, what do I value now? So the families that didn't, have the time to spend together, all of a sudden found so much time and they're loving it. Or, right, we know there's some people who lost jobs or got laid off who are going, I don't want to go back to that field. I've never liked that field. I'm going to redefine myself and follow my passion. And yes, I can take less money because I rather follow the path of my heart and my passion and legacy than a routine. And I think that's what it offers us. We're at a crossroads. What do you want to redefine? What do you want to reevaluate for yourself and say, that's what I want to have back? Is it family time? Is it our faith and spirituality that maybe we experience? Exercise, our health, right? Our intimacy. How did I show up in this world? And what's available to us. But yes, and then I think then it offers you the space of, now it's my intention for creating that world. Mm-hmm. But I think it does come from some places of self-reflection, and there's a lot of grief. And grief is not just from the deaths. How many people are still grieving the loss of their jobs? They love their career. There's also those people who, I spoke to someone who's in the service industry. The hospitality industry was devastated this past year and a half. These people have been in this field for 20, 30 years. That is their juice. That's keeps them alive, is right, being an event coordinator or however that looks like in the service industry. And they got furloughed, and then they got laid off, and now they have no job because it's not picking up at the same rate, even though it is. It's not what it was in our service industry corporations. And so, how do they go about it? Because they do want back what they had versus the person who's saying, thank you, and now I'm going to go create something different. It's an interesting crossroad to be at.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, I think the grief or whatever we've experienced, that it hasn't missed anybody.
No.
Because there's a grieving or a letting go of the world we lived in, because it's not that world.
No.
It's not that world. And that's pretty deep if you really take it in. We're not going back to the same world. Mm-hmm. So what are you doing in the new world? And I also think it's important. I wasn't as affected. First of all, our family's been very blessed. We really weren't affected by COVID. We have friends, and our guest has, and my business actually grew. But that doesn't say to me, don't look. So I think it's important for acknowledging everybody that has had change and grief and experience. And what about us who haven't been as affected? It's still a time for us to look. It's still a time for me to look. Even though my business grew, I've always had closeness with my son. We had the same closeness. Yeah, we went for walks, but we've always spent time together. So I haven't been affected. There was a time, I'll just share, I own a contract management company, and when COVID was really hitting, I had this huge job, and we thought everything was going to be shut down. Home Depot, supply houses, da-da-da. I went out and bought all the materials I needed for like 7 months, put them in my clients' garages. I mean, because I thought it was going to end. It didn't, and I had a great year, but I still don't want to turn my back on looking at what has happened, or what do I want more? Just because I didn't suffer or I didn't go through the same exact thing as other people, that doesn't get me off the hook. And I think that's what I'm speaking to, is just because you weren't affected doesn't mean you shouldn't look at your intention, your life.
Sure.
What do I want to add to it? What do I want to create? Maybe it's a way of looking now at how do I want to create, not just succumb to a life that is. I know there's another word I'm not getting for that, but not letting life tell me what to do, or like just falling into my jobs is like, what do I want to create? What do I want to do now? What do I want? Do I want to live into and create a world, Mahatma Gandhi, live the world you want to see? Like, am I willing to step into that now? Step into the world I want to really see. Do I want to see a divided world or a loving world? Do I want to see division or togetherness? Do I want to see inequality or equality? Do I want to see, like, all these things to look at that we've just kind of brushed aside or just lived with, didn't question. But now we have this pandemic that came, and it's a chance to question it all. And
it did. I mean, I want to just say this. You've said several times, I wasn't affected. I'm going to say you were. Yes. I know psychically, psychologically, even, your son being at home, right? I think he had schooling here. He has pretty much his freshman high school, year was spent in his gaming room. And I agree. It's also such an interesting year. We had an election during the pandemic. We really had an opportunity to see the racial inequality and inequity in really significant ways. The money inequities came out, right? So there is so much that got revealed, and right, human beings want to go back to homeostasis, right? John Bradshaw, we're always looking to go back to homeostasis. Mm-hmm. It's natural for an organism to be like, let's go back. It's normal. Like, right, stop. Let everyone like how it used to be, or that's how we do it. And I agree with you. There's comfort, and it's like almost that rut. It's like, well, that's how we go back and forth. We just go in this place, and to step and go, let's do something different. Though I think COVID forced everyone to do something different. And so it's going to be very interesting to see what that looks like. For me too, I would say people would be like, well, what? I'm an introvert. I loved being at home. I also work from home. I coach from home. So for me, there was not the sense of going out didn't change because I don't go out a lot. And yet, right, my impact was also significant, even though it looked on the surface that my lifestyle didn't change during COVID. I think my partner was closed by law for 2 months. And so certainly there was at least 2 months or so that we were home every day together. But it is that space now. I agree with you. What do we want to create, or what do we want to say? Even what was the newness that I want to say? This is not new anymore. This is my life, right? So if it was biking every day as a family, what are we going to do with that? Are we going to still make time? Are we still going to say that's a priority? My health, my commitment, my intimacy with my family members is still that important, that we get to keep that. We get to figure that out and carve it, because something got let go of to make space for this. And are you still willing to let the space be there and not fill it up with distractions and, I could go then do that now, and I could go do that. And I also get people also want to have some of those things again. Like, I want to go for my pedicure and have it be okay and not wear a mask. By the way, we still can't do that in our state, right? So I get that there's a place of some normalcy, and right, what is also the opportunity here. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the gift that COVID is given, though, being an unwelcome guest, most definitely.
I stand corrected, yes. My lifestyle per se didn't change, but yes, the underlying factors are, feelings about it. Did I feel the anxiety that was out there, and the unsureness and the sadness and grief, the collective? Yeah. For sure. I also went through a relational heartbreak. I mean, that's right. So for me, I was in that. I was heartbroken. I brought it on myself for sure. So I was living in that loss and pain, which was a lot stronger for me, or felt a lot stronger. But yes, definitely the grief of the world, the transition, the change, the uncertainty.
And that's, and I think we still have it. And this is just my assessment, is that there's still a space in us that wants to squash the uncertainty, because that's just not comfortable, right? Economically, mentally, socially, right? When we think about interdependence-wise, but that is, right? How do we maintain this gift of how do we live with uncertainty? Because it's there all the time, but we want to say that illusion's not there. There's nothing, right? It's a joke, right? It's death and taxes. You're certain. Birth, death, and taxes. On some level, it's true, right? Everything else, there's no certainty in anything else.
And who knows about death, the way they're working on genetics.
This is true. This is true. And that there's nothing wrong with wanting certainty. I'm certainly someone who does. I could be a real stickler, and also seeing what's the expansion that could take place here. What else can we allow into that area to nurture and grow? I think this has been an amazing time when we watch social media and the amount of entrepreneurs who have gotten creative, financially very successful. And I don't mean that in millionaires. When I say success, I'm not measuring that by dollars. The fact that they saw an opportunity, created it, had the ingenuity, and they took action on it, and it resulted in something like people creating, journals or T-shirts, or selling items on, Amazon, or whatever that may be, the entrepreneurship that we see, on TikTok. That was an app that came out during COVID, right? We had Clubhouse come out. These are all these new ways of connecting and sharing geniusness. I think it's an extraordinary time. These platforms just highlight what's possible, and I don't think they tell the whole story, because I also think there are people who are economically still very devastated, who who need the federal funding to maintain lifestyles, homes, and there's that balance. It's always that balance, and how is our fellow brother and sister doing? And I only know by pulse through my counseling, because I counsel people from one side of our country to the other, and sometimes internationally, or I coach them internationally, and you really get a sense. I spoke to a man in Singapore. Singapore's in significant lockdown, right? They're not in the lifestyle that we're experiencing in the United States. They don't have a vaccination. Their economics are booming in some areas, and their lower classes are suffering even greater, right? I have friends that are trainers in South America. These are states that are still locked down. I have a friend who just lost his mother in France. They're closing down by 6 o'clock every day in some of the boroughs, right? So it's like, I also say that because it's not our worldview. My worldview is not the worldview of everybody's. And I feel there's still people out there that are still in a place of getting through this in a different place than maybe where I am getting through it, right? We're not on the same timeline of what this experience has been like, by no means.
Yeah. I think in the beginning of when I had said intention, that was what I was thinking about. It's this collective love. Are we going to still live with, I want more, I have to have more, the hell with everybody else? We've been living in that world, and that's what I was talking about, the intention of how do we shift that? And I know it's shifting in some areas, but where's the greater, it's very possible it's happening, and we don't see it all the time. But where we're inclusive, it's inclusive. We don't keep going, somebody pays a price or somebody gets less because I keep getting more. Mm-hmm. Where's the space? And I think in certain areas we're doing it, certain areas need to be looked at. And I think that's where, for me, the intention, or what am I looking at? Who do I want to be? How do I want to serve? How can I serve more?
Yeah. I think this is the opportunity to say it highlighted where it was about me, and I don't mean me personally. It's about the me-ness, or is it going to be about the we-ness, right? Like, can we make that shift of being so center-focused? And maybe in America we are a little bit more self-indulgent than other countries. I'm not saying all of us, but our focus has been about my survival, right? At your cost or anyone's. It's not about that. And you're right. Are we going to get through this together? And how are we going to do that? And how can we come together and not be right and wrong, but where can we do this? With commitment, intention, love,
kindness,
humanity,
understanding, acceptance. But I do believe, it's a chance for us to reach each other in different ways.
Mm-hmm. It was a neutralizing playing field. This didn't have this illness didn't have, a profile like, oh, it's going to be this ages and this. We know there was more vulnerabilities, but overall, this didn't have a race, didn't have an age, didn't have a skin color, right? It is political party. It was wherever you were in the world, right?
It doesn't matter if you're successful, poor. I don't want to dismiss that maybe people that were poor or colored didn't get treated differently.
Yes, they do. Mm-hmm.
But that, yes, if you were successful, it didn't matter. You weren't insulated or protected from this at all.
No, not at all. So I think it was important for us to take a moment and pause and honor, because this theme that I feel that COVID has brought in this conversation really is in any conversation, right? When we think about healing and being I call it choice point. We're always at choice point. And we're at choice point in my eyes. It could be about my relationship, my health. It could be about my career. But here we are. This is a bigger choice point, right? This is about who are we as the people of the world, citizens of the world. And, what are we going to do moving forward? Are we going to claim a we? And I think it was important to talk about in the sense of how can we create that community? How do we get out there? And I've said I've done it and how I have, and there's probably other ways to do that. And if that's being in service, buying groceries for somebody or assisting them during a time when they didn't have funds to pay for rent, and I assisted people during that time. There's still needs. So how to reach out and how to create this conversation in other places, because this is the conversation. We are all one. I mean, that's my come from, is we're all one. We're all connected. I am you, you are me, in that sense. And I also get that I'm not always connected to me. So that means I'm not always connected to you. Mm-hmm. And I really, in our theme of, I believe in our podcast and our conversation is, how do we live that extraordinary life? And I think that's what this has shown us. Are we living in the here and now? And this was, right, I've said this before, is you get it in a feather or you can get it in a hammer. Well, I want to tell you, world, this was a freaking sledgehammer. So what do we want to do? What do we want? Like, what kind of wake-up call do you need? And I am hoping that there are people who will get their lessons. I feel like I'm still learning mine from COVID, and I don't think any of us maybe finished with our lessons of from this Unwelcome Guest, and still saying, where are my priorities? What has it taught me? What was the mirror of how I showed up, my reactivity? When was I us against them? And where was I attacking? Because if I attack my brother, I attack myself. Right? And still being in that space of how can I let peace be in the conversation and not about righteousness, so that we can move forward as, one global world. And I don't know. I know people are finding their own way home. And so I do hope in this one, too, that we make that choice.
Well, I second what you say, and I think it's about that love. And for me, I just look at, I always think it's internal, like it's an inside job, as they say, is that for me, it's listening to that voice, whether it's divine, spirit, the energy, universe, whatever. That voice is telling me, and for me, that voice is kindness. That voice is love. That voice is seeing peace and seeing the other person and empathy and so that's my cultivation. That's my work. It's always been my work, is to listen to that voice, because that voice shows me love. That voice shows me where to go, where peace is, where kindness is, like how to be in the world. Mm-hmm. And the less I resist that, the more I open to that, the more I do create what I want to see, and that love, that acceptance, that beauty.
We are the mirror.
Mirror,
and this was revealing. Because I think that's what it was. It was like it showed us all something of ourselves.
Yeah.
And now what? Now how can we love ourselves through that, forgive, and still move forward? And
let go of the belief system that we always have to be hit by a sledgehammer. Because I think I lived with that for many years, getting whacked, or a sledgehammer. I call it getting whacked. Instead of listening, a harder path. And I think, as I'm learning, is there's easier ways. If I listen, I don't have to. It can be a feather. And so, okay, we were sledgehammered the world, but the belief is that's how we always have to go. And I'm not sure that's really how it has to be. I think that's how we tend to learn and grow. We tend to have something strong or pain, and maybe there is other ways. Mm-hmm. I'm open to the possibility that there's other ways. That seems to be the way, but there could be another way. Where it can be where we learn through love. And there's still lessons, but they're love and they're communication and they're open and they're flowing and they include. And, so I just want to put that out there from COVID and all this, is that there could be other ways.
There certainly can be.
Because I don't really want some more pandemics coming.
No.
I'd like to find another way.
I think so.
I'm working on it for myself. That's all I can, the best I can do, and then share that outward. But
there you go. Heal thyself, and and we get to heal others from that space.
So in this place, we really want to bring in our guest and welcome her, because she has a great perspective and some really golden nuggets for everybody. So let's welcome our guest.
Hi. We're going to deepen our conversation as Marc and I have been talking about the Unwelcome Guest, and that's, how I've looked at the coronavirus. And, my perspective being a therapist and a coach on the front lines with many families and seeing the impact on individuals. So today we decided to have and welcome an extraordinary individual to add to our conversation. And I'm happy to have our guest here, Diane Carozza, who is a graduate of the Institute for Integrative Nutrition and is an accredited holistic health coach by the Association of Drugless Practitioners and Columbia University. Diane has a 30-year corporate career working and providing clinical services to research in the pharmaceutical industry. She is currently the Vice President of Clinical Strategic Solutions at WCG and actively supports the data-driven clinical research strategies across the therapeutic areas, including COVID-19, oncology, and rare diseases. She has a passion for dance and has remained active in all forms of dance for more than 45 years. And the love of dance supports her overall wellness, and her 2 daughters keep her on her toes. Thank you for being our guest, and welcome, Diane.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
It's wonderful to have you.
Thank
See
you
again. It's
yes,
been a while.
Absolutely.
It's been a while. So we know COVID has been an unwelcome guest, and it's really hit people in different ways. It's affected. Some people have been fine. Some people have been affected deeply. And we know you've been on all different sides of it, from the clinical side to family experience and all. And we wanted to invite you here today because you have so much information. You're such an amazing person. We wanted you to share deeply about your experience. So maybe you could just give us the beginnings of what COVID was like and what was happening and what started to happen in your family.
Sure. So I'm going to go back to last March, where I believe it was March 21st. And 21st, 22nd, I got a call from work at 7 a.m. and it said, we've got to turn around a site list for the first COVID-19 study within 24 hours. And one of the main players that now has put a treatment out on the market is my largest client. And they were expediting the start to the first treatment trial. And we had to go out and find hundreds of what is considered investigator sites. So these are physicians who specifically have the infrastructure within their private practices or within the hospitals and facilities that they work to conduct clinical research. It's a very specific thing because there are a lot of regulatory requirements about conducting clinical research in these facilities. And so it's not so easy as just picking up the phone and saying, hey, Dr. Jones, this is going to be a super cool thing to work on. You want to be a part of it. So it really started on day one. The pandemic started and the scientific community just put their gears in action immediately. And my company is the largest central ethical review company in the industry. And so we knew that we were going to be in the forefront of the research on this very quickly. And to be clear, I am not on the ethical review side. I'm on the clinical research side. And in order to really maintain that very unbiased approach, we are completely disconnected from the clinical services group versus the ethical review group. Nevertheless, we knew that we were going to be in the front lines of this immediately. So I started to learn very quickly whatever was known about this disease and what the potential implications were going to be, because this was going to require a different type of physician and a different type of facility that had ever been used in any of these type of virology studies before. So I got involved very quickly, very intensely, very intimately, and really had to educate myself in a very objective way on what the facts were as they were coming out. So first and foremostly, I'll tell you, I am a scientist, and everything I believe about the universe and spirit and all of my existence is firmly rooted in fact. And I believe that science and all of the rest of those things are completely interwoven. And so I knew that this was unlike anything that this world had ever seen in our lifetime, and that in order for me to be able to do my job and also show up as the person that I am, that I needed to remain very based in fact. And when I say fact, it's not just because somebody tells me so. It needs to be proven. So anyway, we wound up doing 21 clinical trials in 2020 in COVID research. We did treatment trials, we did vaccine trials, we did what's considered prophylaxis trials. So those are for families that have been exposed to COVID because another member of their family had been impacted. And so they were trying to prophylactically treat them so that they were not going to be susceptible, different from a vaccine. So that's really the extent of kind of where my year took me. And then fast forward exactly, I believe to the date, 1 year later in 2021, on March 21st of 2021, my family gathered as a whole for the first time. We had been together on one other occasion over the holidays, but for the most part, we had not all seen each other because not all of the different families have been as careful as we were comfortable. But it was my nephew's 21st birthday on March 21st. And my mom said, we need to be there to support him. And my kids said, Grandma, we don't want to go. And she said, we have to support him. And so my family said, we'll just be there for cake. So they all went out to dinner. We showed up. The candle was already lit on the birthday cake when we walked in the door. We sang happy birthday. My nephew blew out the candle. We joked, we're not having any of that cake because he just spit on it. We had our chocolate chip cookie, and we went home. 1 hour beginning to end. That was it. And that was a Sunday. And Wednesday, me and my 2 daughters started to experience symptoms, severe headache, low-grade fever. I said, oh, my goodness. So that was the beginning, because within then, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, all 12 people in the room had been diagnosed with COVID.
Wait a second. Everybody at the party for your nephew.
Everybody in the room tested positive.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
And so this was pre-vaccination. You hadn't had vaccine yet?
I hadn't been vaccinated. My brother-in-law, my mom, and my dad had been fully vaccinated. My brother had been partially vaccinated. My father and my brother-in-law had very mild symptoms. It was only because we all got tested. My dad's a physician. My brother-in-law is a police officer that we said, look, you guys got to know. You can't go to work unless you know. And then they had, a mild cough kind of thing. They both tested positive. My mother had been fully vaccinated, but because she had underlying medical conditions, she had rheumatoid arthritis, she had another collagen disorder, she also had mild COPD from many years of smoking many years ago. We always knew that she was high risk, and why I really cautioned her to be as careful as possible. She was also diagnosed, and so all 12 of us, we're all positive, and initially it's a joke. It's like, who's going to feed us? Nobody's allowed to leave the house. We all have COVID. Who's feeding us if we're all sick?
True Italian response.
Yes, exactly what we're all worried
Where's
about.
The pasta and meatballs?
Yeah, I'm calling up friends like, could you do a porch delivery, please? And unfortunately, it quickly turned to serious. My sister wound up hospitalized by that Sunday. So within 1 week, she was hospitalized first. My sister's severe asthma. And then my mom was hospitalized the next day.
So here you are working clinical trials, working on the vaccine trials, families partially vaccinated, and all this comes tumbling down.
All this comes tumbling down. And I know more than the average bear, right? So this is where it all starts to spiral, where, the feeling of being out of control here and a sense of helplessness to the naivete of the medical community around how to treat patients with COVID was really, right in my face, and not making me happy.
Yeah, I just want to, you've shared so much. There's a lot to unpack here for a moment. And
I'll take a breath. Where do you want to go?
Breathe.
The family piece is certainly pulls on my heart, and I'm very well aware of that. And then there's this other side, right? The science side and the naivete. I appreciate that word. If I could go back a little to the trials in that year, I'm just curious, as an observer, and you were in there as a contributor, what was your experience of the collaboration and the attitude and the openness of scientists in this area that, yes, we've known a strain of this virus, SARS, but this was an unknown, an unknown.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of curious what that was like.
I love that question because people really, I think, have underestimated the miracle of what happened here. I actually got chills as you asked it because I've been in clinical research for 30 years. I started working and had most of my pharmaceutical career before I turned over, I say, to the dark side of technology and services. I spent 17 years working for the largest pharmaceutical company in the world, who is one of the primary contributors to treatment today. And when I saw the biggest pharma companies in the world bring their scientists together in a completely transparent, unbiased, open your robes, this is all we got to give, let's figure this out together, it was miraculous to see. Never did I think that something would unite the industry in this way. So I've seen it once before. I was the company representative for a very large consortium of pharmaceutical companies. 20 of the largest pharma companies came together to try and optimize the overall processes in pharmaceutical clinical research. And I was the representative for the company I was working for at the time. And everybody said that wasn't going to work because you could never get all of these big players in the room and have them agree and have them, there was always going to be this fear of exposing the proprietary information. When you really got all of the A-team together, all we wanted to do was help humanity. And if there was a way to come together and help physicians do their job more easily, help patients get treated more quickly in the areas that are most meaningful and taxing on our world right now, that pure intention was there. And so I had witnessed it, but that was more on the process level. This was science. These are the most brilliant scientists. You didn't know that for 10 years this mRNA research has been going on behind the scenes because these scientists know that this threat was real and they've been ahead of the curve all along. And, things like Zika have been treated with this methodology before, but Zika didn't wind up killing how many millions of people across the world. So it didn't get as much transparency as this is. But, this methodology has been one that has been tested for the last decade. It has been in people before. There is safety data there. And when all of the scientists that have conceptualized this came together and just said, we owe this to humanity to bring our best, to bring a treatment to market as quickly and as safely as possible, it was really a very heartwarming and miraculous thing to witness. And something that has so much negative publicity around it, but something that made me very proud to be part of the industry. And to have even played a small role in it brought those of us doing the work a lot of pride.
Yeah, that's inspiring, that level of collaboration and putting the ego aside in that way. And I think you're right, it gets lost in the mix because we talk about which shot, which company versus the bigger picture. And that's also a little confusing. Like, so if we all came together, why don't we all have like X shot? versus every company maybe having their own with their own clinical data of effectiveness. But yeah, that's fascinating. So thank you for sharing that inspiration. And it gives me some hope from a humanitarian point of view that we can see the bigger picture and not be lost in just our dividends and our stockholders.
Exactly.
Right? Like we are the stakeholders.
Right.
We're not here to own your stock. Your company's not as effective or as wealthy. Okay. Wow.
I wanted to say something. I was touched. I started to tear up when you were sharing that because there's been so much skepticism and division and questioning. I'm not here proponent of the vaccine or not or any of it's just that you don't hear that side. You don't hear that people are working together, that they care. Right. You know, it's all, they're trying to make money, And look, everybody's entitled to make money. Maybe they do things, who knows. But to hear that from you and you're on the inside, it does. It is heartwarming, like you said, Claude. And it's a whole different perspective. It even is affecting my perspective because I'm a very skeptical, questioning person. And, I don't always think motives are always on the table.
Right.
But thank you. Thank you. That's really amazing. And in that, I just wanted to ask you, so where do you stand on vaccine and all that? Since you've watched it from a different side, we could be out here and go, oh, I don't know if I like it, or I don't know if you should. We're all having discussions about it. But you come from the inside. So I'm curious to hear your perspective and idea on that.
So I have always said, I have 2 children, as I said, and my children have never gotten a vaccine that wasn't made mandatory. When it came to the varicella vaccine, I brought it to the point where they said, your child can't come to school Monday unless they get the chickenpox shot. And up till that day, I thought, if I could just be invited to a party where I know somebody has it, I would much rather them get it naturally and have lifetime immunity than have to do it through the vaccine and potentially have to do boosters and so forth. So I have never been a proponent of vaccines unless there are underlying medical conditions that put you at a greater risk. And I feel by my personal experience in clinical research for 30 years that there is a degree of evidence of safety that I'm personally comfortable with that I need to witness on my own. So, my children, my older daughter went to daycare when she was very young, and there was a vaccine at the time that they said they couldn't make mandatory, but they wanted to for every kid going into daycare. And, I was made to be the most horrible mother in the world that didn't give her kid the vaccine. And then 2 years later, it was taken off the market because then there was enough safety data to say, this is not safe and it's never come back. So to COVID vaccine, I witnessed that every single trial to date has proven efficacy and safety. There is nothing going on that the public doesn't know. There's nothing anybody is hiding. And that I know that for certain because my company is the one that has to review these trials and confirm from the most unbiased perspective that these trials are safe and effective to go into humans. And every time there's a potential serious adverse effect, that's what they're called, that goes to my company for review. And there are panels of physicians and there are panels of all kinds, lawyers, and there's a priest, there's all kinds of people on, the institutional review boards. And they all have to confirm that the benefit continues to outweigh the risk. The other big thing that the world is just seeing right now, this is kind of amusing to me. Nobody's ever understood what I do for a living ever. And now the whole world understands it. And what I try to explain, because the scientific methodology behind clinical research is correlation does not equal causation. So you're seeing all of this play out right now where, for example, the J&J vaccine, they put it on hold because essentially everybody's in a big clinical research experiment right now. And if you participated in a clinical trial for diabetes and one person had a serious adverse effect, they potentially would put that trial on hold until the full evaluation was done, and they realized, okay, there was a correlation to this happening at the same time that you're being treated with this drug, but it's not necessarily caused by the drug. So every time you see one of these things come up, they're always weighing, is it a matter of correlation or causation? So right now you're seeing the myocarditis in the children, and I just heard someone speak this morning on Good Morning America or something, and he was trying to explain in layman terms that that's exactly what's going on. Is we know that these incidents have happened at the time, around the time that these children have been vaccinated, so it correlates from a timing perspective, but is causation proven? And that's what, that's what we see. So it's been a lot of that, where we have to remember that we all still are in this big clinical research experiment together, and that the things that are happening may correlate to the timing of the vaccination, but the causation is something that everybody's looking in the scientific community, they take incredibly seriously, and they would never allow something with a definitive causation to be continued to go into humans and to ultimately put lives at risk. So, back to how I feel. Again, to me, everything that I've seen has the benefits have outweighed the risks, especially in higher risk, vulnerable individuals. For myself, I especially after I got COVID, I got it bad. I knew I was chock full of antibodies. I was going to be good for a while, but that's just the strain that I'm exposed to. And I was just reminding somebody yesterday who said, I had it last March. I got, I know I still have antibodies. I got tested. Last March, we didn't know about all of these strains. We didn't know the severity of them. We did not know how communicable they were. And so the risk now, where a year ago, if you had antibodies, you were good. You could hold off. Now your antibodies truly are only for the strain you were exposed to. And I'm going to Mexico next week. So, the thought of going out of the country and being exposed to these strains that may be more deleterious than the one that I had scared the daylights out of me, and I got vaccinated. Because to me, the risk of exposing myself to the strains that I'm seeing, that risk outweighed, I knew that the benefit of protecting myself and accepting the minor side effects of the vaccine outweighed the risk of contracting that, especially in a foreign country.
Wow. I want to go back to causation for a moment. And as you think about the idea of, we have to study that, is there a sense of a timeline before we can go, we got causation, it's not there, or it is there?
Right.
Or these are the percentages of it being there?
Right. So, I'm not the expert, because that's never been my job to determine causation, but there are criteria that there are definitely very objective criteria that you look at to be able to say, and also the incidence rate of it too. So when one happens, it's been correlated to the timing, but now even one incidence, that's when it goes back to the scientists. What is happening here? How does the mechanism, and that's the true science behind it, and that's when they're squirreling away like elves in Santa's workshop. This is, how did this happen? How could it happen? Theoretically, how could it happen? And then what are all of those kind of physiological pathways that are going on, and how it can be impacted? It's a very interesting, very scientifically driven process to, and it's never underestimated. I will just tell you that. I worked on, pediatric ear infection studies. I worked on COVID. I've worked on Viagra. Anybody gets a serious adverse effect, even one of them, it's taken extremely seriously. So it's a very scientific process. That's all I can say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I also, in the unpacking, I want to go back to something you shared with us, which is the personal side.
Yeah.
Your family.
Yeah.
And your mother being vaccinated with, your father and a few other family members. And, her underlying issues or health concerns that really seems like it didn't allow her. So one, I want to extend my condolences.
Thank you.
Is, what has that been like to watch this from that side as the daughter?
Yeah. So that kind of then rolls into my experience of the health systems and what it was like to go through this with multiple family members, what it was like to have more than one family member in the hospital and having no control over their care, and not being able to have that personal interaction with the person over a length of time and a tremendous amount of stress. So I'll start with, my first point of anger, because again, back to, I kind of know better. It's not going to surprise anybody. I don't really have a large pool of Western medical practitioners that I go to myself. I go to my gynecologist, I go to my cardiologist because I've got stuff. And other than that, I'm very healthy. So I go to be treated when I need it. But my partner, he regularly sees a primary care physician. He goes, everybody you're supposed to see, he does it all, supposed to see, right? So he gets diagnosed with COVID, and I say to him, call your doctor and let him know right away. Because there are treatments that I've personally worked on that I know that at the first sign of an exacerbation of COVID, there were treatments available to make sure it didn't go any further. And he is an otherwise very healthy, very fit, and there would be no reasons why he wouldn't have been eligible to receive these treatments that are also still considered experimental, but same emergency use. He wound up, then he called back as things started to get serious, asked for the treatment. I told him, ask specifically. And they told him, just get a lot of rest, drink a lot of water. And I was like, my head's blowing up, because this is where science kicks in. Like, I had him all of us taking the whole vitamin regimen and doing all of the electrolyte replenishment and everything that we knew we needed to do to take care of ourselves while we were home. And this was my older daughter, my partner, and myself lined up like, the three little pigs in bed because nobody can move. And we were doing everything that, we knew that we could do to take care of ourselves. But he had the opportunity, he specifically, because of what I knew his experience, his overall health status was, and they didn't offer it to him, which made me very angry. Wasn't even an option. Then to see my sister go into the hospital, and she started to get blood clots in her lungs and in her legs, and they just left her in bed. They just left her in bed and started jacking her up with all of these random treatment methodologies. And I kept saying, what's the plan? That, who's driving the ship there? There's a plan. And if you've got blood clots anywhere, you need to keep moving. But there she was in bed, and no one could see her, and that was her. And then there was my mom. And funny but not funny, my dad is a physician. He was a physician in the hospital she was at for 50 years. And once I came out of my febrile stupor after 13 days of having a fever myself, I'm like, Dad, what are you doing? You're not really taking care of Mom here. You've got to be involved. She's in serious condition. She was in the ICU. And I told him, you're demoted. You're demoted. You're out. You need to tell the hospital I'm the point of contact. I'm making the decisions. If a doctor needs to talk to you, that's fine. But I'm calling the shots here, because when you can't see your loved one in the hospital, And you can't look for those cues that any of us who have had a loved one, a friend, a family member, and you go to visit them, even if it's not every day, but you're looking for those small signs that something's not right. You know, hey, nurse, I was here yesterday and she didn't look like that, you know, or she wasn't feeling that or whatever. You don't have that opportunity with COVID. That was extremely frustrating. So what I would do, I was a little bit of a nag. I would call 10 a.m. and speak to the morning nurse and ask her how did she do overnight. And I would call at 10 p.m. and I would speak to the nightly nurse, who was never quite the same caliber. But even if my mom was unable to speak herself in the middle of the day because she was on high flow oxygen, not intubated because she didn't want that. But she had the big mask on and everything. And even if she couldn't really speak, I would make her nurse at around lunchtime go into her room and FaceTime with me so I could see her. And I would ask her yes and no questions so I could kind of get to what she's feeling and experiencing. And this started to really anger me because I saw that the quality of her care was not what it should be for what she was experiencing. My mother did not have any other symptoms. You know, she just, because she wasn't able to hold her oxygen well. But other than that, you know, they were expecting she'd be out in a few weeks. She'd have to be on an oxygen tank, and she wasn't going to be happy about that, but she'd be alive. But there was really no other reason why they had any reason to believe she wasn't going to make it. And she went in, I believe it was around, I want to say maybe the 30th of March, it was within the Monday after that, so whatever that would be, yeah, around that time. And she passed away on April 17th. Quickly.
Wow, that's quite quick also in lots of ways.
Yeah. And spoke to her that day. She was complaining that, you know, she had this, you know, high flow oxygen being blown into her sinuses now for 3 weeks straight. She was uncomfortable. And they had her hands restrained, which was horrible, but unconsciously when she was sleeping or whatever, she was trying to pull the mask down because it was so uncomfortable. So they had her hands restrained, so she couldn't answer her phone. And it was her birthday 2 days before she passed, and people were calling, and you know, she hears the thing buzzing in front of her, and she can't reach the phone. It was very difficult to watch, and very, very difficult for me that last week. When they moved her from the ICU back into the COVID ward, I saw the difference in the care, and it made me very upset. But they've got so many patients that it's provide the basic care and move on to the next one and check. And you can't blame the people in the hospital. They're completely overwhelmed. But again, that lack of connection to the friends and family who would otherwise act as those patient advocates, so that no nurse has time to sit there, you know, looking at the patient 24/7 and watching for small cues. You rely on family and friends to be that mouthpiece, to advocate for what your patient and loved one needs. But we didn't have that. And so I was almost starting to get obsessive about it. And it was really breaking me down emotionally, because I just never felt like I was doing enough, but there was nothing more that you could do under the circumstances. So then am I making the right decisions? Because every decision then, you know, you felt like it was a matter of life and death. It was a big weight. And so to know, you know, again, my science mind and then my highly emotional mind, a highly emotional heart, you know, complicated by, you know, my mom and I weren't the best of friends, but she loved and trusted me more than anybody, because she just kind of respected my objectivity, and she knew I had a big soft heart. She didn't necessarily get me, but I know that she, because I asked her, I asked her, one of the yes/no questions is, Mom, do you want me to continue to be the one making the decisions for you? And she's like vehemently shaking her head. I said, do you want me to turn it over to Dad? And so I knew she trusted me. But it still weighed heavy.
Wow. I want to acknowledge that you got to be there with her, it sounds like, in the end, in some way, to experience her transition. How do you reconcile or dance between the science, and I hear the emotional, but I also, when I read your bio, right, there's this nutritional healing, as you said, you had all your little vitamins. So how do you dance between these two? Not that they're an adversary, they're actually complementary in my mind, but yet their foundation sometimes is very different,
I think that you hit it right on the nail on the head. I see it as perfectly complementary, because my approach, just the way I explained about the vaccines, is always to let the body heal itself whenever possible. So give your body every opportunity to take care of itself and heal itself. Let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food. And that's where I start all the time. So to take a step back, I was the great hope of the family. I was pre-med. I was heading into the MCATs, and I called my parents, which was very not allowed to do, and said, I'm not taking the MCATs and I'm not going to medical school. And there's I'm in college, of course, and there's silence on the other end of the phone because I never defied them, ever, which was part of the problem. And so they said, well, what do you think you're going to do with yourself now? And I said, I don't know, but I know enough. And, I'm 20 years old, and the words out of my mouth were, I know enough that I want to heal people. I don't want to just treat them. And their response was, well, that's a waste of a good brain. So, after I wasn't going to medical school, they were like, well, good luck to you then. I don't know what you think you're going to do with this. But I studied nutritional biochemistry. And even if I was going to become a physician, I wanted to be an endocrinologist, because I felt like endocrinology at least was, kind of all those underlying mechanisms of how hormones play into overall health. And so I really tried to then pivot in that direction, and that began my journey toward really wanting to heal through nutrition whenever possible. So when I think about where this came in, I was a chemistry major, though. And so I really, my kids laugh because they've heard me say it a million times. To me, science is everything, and everything is science. So it still all comes down to science. I mean, if you work with energy, all the concepts of serendipity is just energy exchange. Those are atoms with electricity behind it, and dissonance and resonance. It's all science. So that's the basis for me. And so where the body can heal itself, give it every opportunity to do that. And at the point that it needs more, that's where both Eastern and Western medicine comes into play. There are alternative therapies that's different to me than, body healing itself through proper nutrition and care. So that's true integrative medicine. And, one of my aha moments was when I was in IIN at that time. It was in person, and we had Andrew Weil speaking as our in person as our teacher that weekend, and he talked about his first integrative medical school. And I was there with my cousin. We did the course together, and she's a school teacher, and I'm a scientist, and we had completely different reasons of being there. And I'm sitting there, I got tears pouring down my face, and she looked at me. She's like, "You're such a geek. What are you crying about?" I said, "That's it. If that were in existence when I was in college, that would have been my path." So that's just my mindset. There is a role for the integration of Eastern and Western medical approaches, but the foundation has to be self-care and allowing your body to heal itself and giving it every opportunity to do that. So it's completely interwoven to me.
Thank you. I love that line. Let was it medicine, heal thyself?
Yeah, that's
I'm
the
sorry,
part of the
it's food.
Hippocratic. Oh, this
Yeah.
Hippocrates states, "Let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food."
I love that one. I got to write that down after the interview.
Every
I'm gonna borrow
doctor
that one.
has to say that as part of the Hippocratic Oath, yet they don't learn nutrition in medical school
Oh.
until very recently.
I want to thank you for sharing some of your intimate, your family experience. As you look on this year, if there's any lessons or wisdoms that you've learned or gained, what would you want to share with our listeners?
I think, there's just, when I am closing my eyes, because I see just this swirl of chaos around me. And just by virtue of what I do, I don't even really talk about it much because it immediately drums up controversy. And I'm not a controversial person. I don't really have many strong opinions about anything except for how I live my own life. I, again, just choose to base my life in fact. And so what I will say is, and it sounds almost trite, but everybody has to find their own truth. And you have to stand in it. And that is easy to say and not easy to do, because you really have to examine and re-examine what is your truth every day, because it's going to be tested. And, I work with people who are like, if you are not vaccinated, you're going to the dark place. And no one was ever asking me, though, are you vaccinated? Do you intend to be vaccinated? And as I said, if I wasn't going out of the country, I didn't feel a strong need to be doing that myself right now. This just only happened a couple of weeks ago. So I feel that that's been the biggest lesson for myself, is to feel confident in my truth, to constantly be questioning myself and what my truth is, and inviting other people who just kind of like to bite at you to say, really, what is your truth behind that? I've lost a lot of respect for a lot of people because of just, buying into the chaos and not having really any stance of them for themselves. And not that, I've written them off forever. It's just there isn't space for them right now, because it's just big and overwhelming. And it feels just very inauthentic to me to be around that, because now it's deeply personal. So that's my clear message after my full year experience with this.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you carry so much wisdom, Diane.
Aw.
I mean, we've met a long time ago.
Long time ago.
Under interesting alternative healing.
Yes.
But your wisdom and your way of presenting both sides without bias is beautiful. I think helpful for people listening. For me, myself, you have opened me up in places of my bias and looking at myself. Part of your gift. I mean, you have so many gifts. Your heart, yes, you have the most beautiful, loving heart. And so appreciate you sharing all this with us. And of course, my heart for your mother and all that experience and your family. And so appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
So love you being here. Love you.
I
Always
appreciate
have.
thank you so much, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share. I'm no evangelist by any means. I just appreciate the chance to speak my truth, and in such a safe space that you've always held for me.